Hey, I was I was pondering yesterday a couple of things as I woke up and was thinking about trying to figure out why it's so complicated to simplify stuff, and why there is always it's like a fractal where the deeper you go into trying to simplify something, there's all kinds of complexity in wherever you go, and just pondering how to deal with that in the big picture. If everything is always opens up a bunch of complication, then how do we manage things in a way that is actually, doable without just constantly dealing with so much more complication than we can handle? And I'm always fascinated in the process of improvising on piano that things always end up being more musical. They end up being more harmonious and more listenable when we focus on simplifying, and instead of always thinking that everything has to be just this morass of like a whole bunch of notes. There can be a bunch of notes, but it doesn't necessarily make something musical if there's just a bunch of notes in there. So what is it that makes things musical? What is it that makes things genuinely appealing and genuinely interesting to listen to and enjoyable, and it makes us feel good? And I often tell my clients that if you are playing something and you find yourself being bored by it, then the first step in really connecting more deeply to what you're doing is to listen to the sounds themselves, instead of being all in analytical mode about what notes am I supposed to play and all of that kind of stuff that isn't really the music. It's like, what is it that you're playing? What's the sound of what you're playing? And then what wants to change? And then moment to moment listen to each sound, and then ask internally, like, where does that want to go? What's wanting to happen now? And that's how we can find ourselves into a more interesting process. That's just been my experience, is that when I am playing and I find myself getting bored with what I'm playing or not inspired by what I'm playing, it's usually because I recognize that my mind is in other places, or that it's I'm trying to do too much with my conscious mind in the moment. And so I find that it helps me sometimes to just play one note and listen to it, and then is there a beat? And then it's like you can sort of step on this flow of sounds that end up becoming something that I find is more engaging for me. And I think that's the way that it can work for all of us. And that the challenge is, and I think there are ways in which that principle of simplifying can help us in other areas of our lives as well. And I have this tool that I call the Holy Trinity of Improv, which I think it's a description of what happens in the improv process for musical improvisers and theatrical improvisers and anybody who is finds themselves in a situation where you're not sure what's going to happen next, and you're really needing to pay attention to navigate some uncertain circumstance. That Holy Trinity of Improv it answers three foundational questions. One is, what is happening now? Because that's the first kind of question that every living thing, I think, needs to wrestle with on an ongoing basis. It's like, what's going on? As soon as we're born, we're sort of launched out into this world, and it's like, what's going on? What's happening? What? It's like, what's going on? What is happening now? What is happening? What's happening? And then the second question is, who am I in the midst of this? Who am I? And setting aside questions of consciousness and how self-conscious different living beings are, including human babies. There's all different kinds of levels of consciousness, and so I'm not really wanting to address how self-aware any of us are. I don't even want to talk about how self-aware I am, because I don't really know how self-aware I am. I have a perception of how self-aware I am, but I'm sure that other people would have different opinions about about that. And so that's one of the things, actually, that sort of I fold into my way of looking at things, is the extent to which we don't know what we don't know. But for now, I just want to say that the second foundational question is, who am I now? Who do I perceive myself to be in this moment? How can I connect to some level of awareness about who I am relative to what is happening around me and what I notice in my environment? And of course that can include, if I, to take it sort of to other levels in a moment, I could say that if I am simply awareness, if that is what I actually am, then I have a hand, I have two hands, I have thoughts, I have feelings, I have experiences, but those are things that happen to my awareness. They happen, and we could call that also something that is happening now. So that could also be an answer to the first question, who am I now? It's kind of part of what's happening now. But for the sake of helping us to be more functional in terms of who we experience ourselves as, which is we experience ourselves as separate beings, and that there is a stuff out there happening, and then there's this me that I perceive myself to be. You call it ego, call it whatever you want, but that's the experience that we have. And to say, okay, well, who am I? Who am I in the midst of this environment? And then the third question is, what do I do now? Do I sign up for grad school? Do I say this next sentence? Do I go get a peanut butter sandwich? Do I ask this person out? It's like we're always taking what we know and what we have experienced, and we're mulling all that together along with what is happening now, and then we're making decisions about what to do. Walk outside, whatever. It's however big or momentous the decision is. Do we move to Timbuktu? Do we go eat the peanut butter sandwich? It's like we're always making decisions about what to do based on what is happening now and who we perceive ourselves to be in any particular moment. And so, from the standpoint of complexity and simplicity, and how does all that relate? When we are making those decisions about what do I do now, it's always now. And Eckhart Tolle and other people, of course, spiritual masters for time immemorial, have talked about the essence of the present, that it boils down to being present. and that all we really have is the present moment, and that the past is really just a series of memories or energies that are still moving through us, and or stuck in us, and that the future is some level of fantasy or some level of dreaming that hasn't really materialized yet. It may be real, but it's not in the present moment, and that in terms of what we do, our only real power is in the present. And so when you bring this down, when you simplify all that even further down to the moment, then I can decide, am I going to play that note or not? And I can decide not to play it. I can decide to play this note instead, and then I can decide to play that note, and then I can decide to play all of those. And I can be consciously aware of thinking that I am, making these decisions moment to moment. And the tricky part of all of this is, and one of the things that occurred to me yesterday, or actually it was this morning, when I was listening to a tape on the law of attraction, which I find really, really interesting, and it dovetails a lot with how I perceive creativity from a piano improvisation point of view. And the way that is that what I think about when I do this piano improvisation thing is that it's you play something and then you listen again. You actually listen first. You're listening first. That what is happening now? Who am I now? And then we're making a decision about what to do or what to play if we're at the piano. So you play the thing and then immediately go back to listening. It's that trinity of improv. The holy trinity of improv is this cycle thing that just sort of keeps cycling. So when you play something, then that becomes something that's happening now. And so the way to respond to that question of what's happening now is to listen. And so to really listen to that sound. And then the next thing is, who am I now? Well, one of the best ways to answer that question is to say, well, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing? What's my state in this now moment? How and if I've just played something like that, then the question becomes, how does that, I'm listening to that sound and how does that feel in me? How does that feel? Liking it or not is one way of answering the question. What aspect of it do I like is another way of answering that. It's like which harmonies and which notes in there really work for me. What is it about that works, and what is it about that I'm drawn to or not drawn to? What wants to change? And so then the next question becomes, okay, well, what do I do now? And so then you're going to play something. So you're going to play something else. So now we've got and these moments they trip by so quickly that it's easy for us to sort of gloss over this moment to moment experience in such a way that it can really distort our ability to recognize what we're capable of. Because we have this experience that we're just on this train that's just moving, and there's not even any space in there for being consciously aware of what it is that you want to do next, because there's so much momentum happening in physical space that we feel unable to change anything. We feel unable to consider the possibility of change because everything just seems to be moving, and it's just going, and there's no way to stop it. I had an experience years ago. I used to do some anti-death penalty work in response to a video that I did for a guy who was on death row in North Carolina. And I did a video that was to be shown to the governor to apply for clemency for him. And because the governor at the time, Governor Jim Hunt, always allowed people of faith to meet with him to make a case for clemency for every death row inmate, which was really kind of strange to a lot of us in the anti-death penalty community, because he, for years and years and years, never commuted a death row sentence. He never commuted one. He kept inviting these people to come and make a case, but then he wouldn't commute any of the cases, no matter how good they were. And actually, he did end up commuting one before he left office. And interesting, just sort of curiously for me, I was one of the people who went to his office and tried to make the case for clemency, and he actually did commute that sentence. And I don't think it was necessarily because of anything that I said, but I don't know. But it was just it was another one of the really good cases for commuting. But the reason I say all that is that we used to have these vigils outside of the prison in Raleigh on the night before an execution was scheduled, or on the night of an execution. And I remember there's a train track right next to that prison. And I remember one night being at this vigil, and this train came by, and I remember just having this really clear, image in my mind. It's like the death penalty is like this huge train that's just, this incredibly heavy, dense metal that's just flying. And the momentum of that train was, I could feel it. It wasn't that far from us, and I could feel, I don't know how many cars it was, but it was one of these, typical train that might have had 50 or 70 cars on it, and just sort of feeling the momentum of all of that weight just moving and thinking, wow, the death penalty just kind of feels like that. It's like it's got this momentum that, like, how would you stop that? And I just really got the sense of, well, it doesn't stop quickly, and it takes time, and it takes concerted effort, and it takes concerted focus of some sort. Things do stop, but the momentum of the physical reality is something to reckon with, something to deal with. And the reason I said that, and the reason I'm kind of bringing all this stuff up, is that where our power is not in the glossing over of moment to moment to moments and looking at, and you can ask questions like, how do you stop a train, or how do you stop the death penalty? And you can sort of entertain it as a question, and it's worth entertaining. And the process of stopping something, or the process of changing something, or process of doing anything always comes down to moment to moment to moment. What are you going to do now? And so that's where the complexity can become simplified. It's like, I don't have to answer that question of how is the death penalty stopped, or how do you stop a train. That's not my question to ask. My question is, who am I now? What is happening now? Who am I now? And what do I do now? And right now, the only thing that I really have to do is think about the fact that, like, part of what is happening now is that I am doing this live stream. I'm playing the piano and I'm talking. And so what can I do now in a way that will move, that will express myself authentically, and that will be an integrated expression of who I perceive myself to be? and it will move the world in the direction that I would like to move it. And so the influence that I would like to have would be to share something that feels true to me, and it feels perhaps interesting enough that it resonates with different parts of me that would like to see things change, like to see the death penalty change, or to see more compassion, and to see more deeper listening between people who disagree with each other, to find ways to not respond violently when we feel violated, how to bring more compassion, and how to bring more understanding, and how to bring more insight into how we can be the kinds of people that we would want to be, and to make the kind of difference in the world that we most want to make. So all those kinds of things can always come down to what to do in this moment. So in this moment, I choose to play. It's like it's this process of learning how to be moment to moment to moment in a way that is a more authentic expression of who we really are relative to the way we normally operate. And so in this practice, one of the things that I do sometimes is that I will is learn how to shift momentum. Like if I'm playing something that's boring, like find ways to change that. And one of the ways that I have found in changing something, if I'm playing something that's boring, is like if I was performing with a group of people and there was an audience and we were playing something and I was bored, I wouldn't have the ability to just stop and just change something, because there's that momentum of all the people and all the consciousness in that room that is on this track already. And it would be unmusical for me to just stop and go, okay. It's like the musicality itself is a higher momentum, and it's a higher calling than my own particular experience of it. Part of what I get to do as an individual is I get to own my own feelings, and I get to notice it's like, well, I'm really bored right now. Let's see, what can I do to make this more interesting for me, and how can that serve the music that's being played? That's what I would do if I was in a performance kind of situation. It's like, how can I bring more that would be like the boring part? The part of me that's bored is wanting something different, wanting something more interesting. So how can I bring that to the moment? And so, but if I'm by myself, I can just, if I'm going along and I'm doing something and it just feels like dancing with scarves, then I can just stop. That's really one of the quickest things to do, is to just stop. And just explore and let each of the sounds be what they are, and allow them to trigger feelings of enjoyment, pleasantry, and sometimes tension and discomfort. Sometimes, we can play a note that sounds, that has a lot of tension in it, and we just go, oh, that's bad, that's terrible, I don't like it, and like jump off of it as if it's something, that it's like almost evil and shameful to have played something that sounded bad. And I'll often say, it's like, well, like Jessica Rabbit, it's just a note. It was just drawn that way. It's just a sound. And so when we're putting these different sounds together, now I could play that and go, ooh, that's just, ooh, I don't like that, yuck. But if we can allow ourselves to own our own experience of the thing, this is a lot less horrible than what's going on in the Middle East right now, in Ukraine, and so many other places. This is a whole lot less horrible. So what can be expanded inside as you listen to something that has some dissonance and some unpleasantry in it? And just take it different places. Just see what might happen, and notice your own agency moment to moment to moment. And here's where the title for this whole thing came to be, which is complexity and simplicity. And the thing is that if we look at life from any kind of perspective that I've ever really found useful, that's too strong, because I'm about to flip that switch. I'm about to flip that script. But life is complex. It's ludicrously complex. The external world is ludicrously complex, and getting more and more so, it seems like. Life splits from oneness to two-ness. And then those pairs split, and then they split, and then they split, and then there's more and more and more and more complexity all the time. And if we are going to navigate that complexity, that's sort of in the realm of what is happening now. There's complexity happening now. And then that second question, who am I now? Well, if we go into our own psyche, into our own spirits, there's also an infinity of complexity in there as well, right? To whatever extent we can even just observe the complexity in the external world, then there's something inside of us that's capable of recognizing that complexity. So there is some level of mirroring going on, and there's some level of complexity within us, at least within our minds and spirits and hearts, that is capable of recognizing the complexity externally. So we are equally complex inside as well. The challenge becomes in how to navigate life in a functional way, and in a way that we can sort of somehow, a lot of times the way it's been described when people are talking about people on the autism spectrum is that, and I'm not an expert on this by any means, but that people who are autistic don't have some of the filters that most people have, in terms of just being able to block out whole swaths of reality in order to just get through the day. And I'm kind of curious about how in the moment, if in the moment, like if what's happening now and who am I now, then what do I do now? That third question really helps to simplify a universe full of complexity. In both that first question and the second question, what's happening now and who am I now? Those are incredibly complex questions to answer. And in the process of deciding what do I do now, it's very obvious that I only have a limited number of options in terms of what to do now. I could play any of these 88 keys, but I can't do that while writing a letter to the editor about what I think about what's going on in Washington. I can't do that while being on Facebook. I can't do that while working on an email. I can't do that. I can only do one thing pretty much at a time. In fact, brain researchers say that when we are multitasking, we're actually just doing just like computers do. We're moving from task to task very quickly, but we're still basically doing one thing at a time. And so that's where the simplicity can come. It's like, okay, I'm taking all of the different possibilities of what I could do, and I'm bringing them all down into something that's doable, that's actionable in a moment, in a single moment. And to whatever extent, my experience of this is to whatever extent I can allow myself to entertain the possibility that that's all I actually am ever expected to do. That's all I'm ever, by anything, if there's anything doing the expecting out there, which I don't know if there actually is. It might just be all me. And so if I can allow myself to accept the fact that all I can ever do is one moment at a time. That's all I'm ever actually capable of doing. There is never a time when I can ever do more than one moment at a time, ever. And so from the standpoint of relating complexity to simplicity, that is one way to allow for simplicity in a way that can be profoundly powerful. And it may be this feature that makes it part of why so many spiritual teachers and people like Eckhart Tolle are talking, that talk about and practice this mindfulness of being in the moment, because that's all we're ever actually able to do. And so that helps us to take all the complexity, the rest of the complexity. The other thing that I thought about this morning about all this is that our subconscious minds, and this is, I think, where, there's two or three things I guess I want to say about it. One is that if I play that thing right there, then several things happen in that very short span of time. It was a very short span of time, but from an actual reality standpoint, it was a whole bunch of moments, right? It was a whole bunch of moments. So it was me having, and I'm just going to describe some of them from a very kind of crude point of view, actually. And that is that I was going to I wanted to play something because I wanted to make some sound, so I made this decision, and then I actually moved my hands over to the keys, and I pushed some notes down, and then the sounds happened, and then I'm listening to the sounds, and then I'm noticing the impact of the sounds on my ears and my body, and then I'm going to the point of going, okay, what do I do next? What do I say next? What now? So these moments pass by really super hyper quickly. And our conscious minds operate much more slowly than our subconscious minds. The signals that travel through our subconsciousness and our subconscious operating system of our bodies and our nervous systems, those signals that are unconscious travel way, way, way faster. I don't have the numbers, but like maybe a couple of 100 times faster than our conscious minds operate. And so from a functional standpoint, we are literally dealing with a tremendous amount of complexity that we can't we can't be aware of. Our conscious minds are literally incapable of dealing with all that complexity moment to moment, simply because, if for no other reason than that those signals travel more slowly. It takes more time for our consciousness to implement itself into physical movements and to making movements and expressing ourselves in the world. And so it's sort of crazy to spend so much time going into the intricacies of the obviousness that our conscious minds are limited, and that's what we have to deal with in terms of what we're executing at the piano or when we're in conversation with our partners or whatever. But I think it can be helpful to be reminded of that, is that yes, there is a tremendous amount of complexity in the world, and yes, we can recognize that and we can acknowledge that, but it is a distortion of reality to think that we are being asked to respond in a similar level of to a similar level of complexity. That's not what we're being called to do, because it's literally impossible to do that, especially moment to moment. And that's what all we have is moment to moment. And so I think this is where we humans may have kind of gotten off the track, is because we think that because we see all this complexity and we can recognize it, that we are supposed to, and that it is incumbent on us by nature of what we recognize about reality to respond in kind. And that to me is a distortion of our power, of what we're capable of. It may be more powerful for me to recognize that complexity, and to recognize that complexity externally and also internally, and then to also notice that all I may be called to do in this particular moment is to do this. And listen to it. And then listen for another note that may want to get played. And then to notice all along is like, how does that feel? How does that feel? This morning when I was listening to that Law of Attraction tape today, the teacher, this was Abraham Hicks, and she was talking about thinking and feeling, and the person that was asking a question about, she said, I've been reading all this stuff, and I've been reading your teachings for a year and a half and listening to CDs every day. And she said, I could write the book and I know all this stuff, but she said, I'm stuck. And she said, I can't get beyond this experience of being stuck. And a lot of times people ask questions and those things. I've been listening to that for on and off for a few years. And I'm fascinated by how well what Abraham or Esther Hicks, whoever is saying it, how well that aligns with my experience of improvising music and improvising just in general, and dealing with the challenges that present themselves to my life and in my coaching. And she was talking about this relationship between thinking and feeling. And she said that she used to title her teachings and her gatherings something about deliberate creativity and deliberate manifestation, something like that. And she said they stopped titling it that way because there's this, it sort of leads to this idea that our conscious minds are what do the manifesting. And she said it's really more a relationship about that. She said, yes, thoughts do, combinations of thoughts do lead to different emotional states, that the emotions, as she put it, are feedback on the thoughts that we're having. And so that's kind of related to what I just said. It's like, how does it feel? Like listen, feel, and play. Like you listen to something, and then how does that make me feel? And then what do I do next? Well, it's that movement from the present moment of when the present moment is playing something, then it's how does that make me feel? Listen to it, hear it, and then how does that make me feel? And then there's some level of deliberate manifestation, if you will, just from the standpoint of making a decision about what to do next, like in that very next moment, just for that next moment. And, I'm saying all these things in a way that I think is conscious, but I'm not thinking about word, but in a way I am moving from moment to moment to moment, feeling how each word feels as it comes out. I'm checking it. It's like, does this feel true? Am I in alignment with who I perceive myself to be? And am I saying the thing that I most want to be saying right now? And I'm having this experience that I'm doing that in a way that is going from my emotional state to a deliberate decision about what to play next. And so that's where the deliberateness comes in. But there's a moment between those two things, which is between the emotion and between the playing something, the decision to play something. And that is the listening that happens inside of that. Because there is a sense when we're in a flow that we're being given these things to, like my conscious mind has the experience of deciding that I want to play that note right there, but it's really hard for us to know whether I made that decision or whether I was just responding to a suggestion that came from someplace I'm not aware of. And it gets pretty kind of esoteric and maybe seems sort of senseless as you're listening to this. I don't know how this is coming across. I'm just wanting to share these ideas in a way that's more spontaneous than trying to plan it all out, because that's how I get stuck. But there is this relationship between what we perceive to be ourselves and what we seem to sense as something that's coming from somewhere else. It's like it's really impossible for my conscious mind to decide that I am the one that decided all of those notes right there, and that I'm deciding all of these words that I'm speaking. I have the experience that that's what is happening, is that I'm making decisions about all of these things. And there's also a way in which my feelings, my experience of myself, my conclusions about who I think I am, those are all contributing at some level to what I'm deciding to do in this particular moment. And the experience that I'm having underneath these sentences right now is that I'm wanting to express things that have been floating around in my consciousness for a while, and I would like to get them out. I would like to speak them. I would like to get them out into the world in ways that they might benefit you in some way or other, or benefit somebody in some way or other that they haven't been benefiting from because I haven't been just sitting down and sharing them. and my desire to share this stuff is getting to be much stronger than my concern about boring people, or concern about looking like an idiot, or my concern about wasting time, and all of those kinds of concerns that have kept me from actually sharing some of my ideas with the world in ways that I have been really hungry to do for decades. I feel like I have a lot that I could offer, and I don't think I do it very well because I kind of tend to run on, which is why it's perfect to just sit here and do an hour-long live stream, especially if nobody watches it. But actually, what I hope is that somehow this will resonate with somebody out there. I hope that somebody is watching this, and that actually I don't know if there's any way for me to tell if anybody's watching this right now or not. But I hope that this can somehow reach you if you're watching this in a way that might help shift something for you that you've maybe been struggling with. And the way that I can imagine that being possible is to somehow really be able to accept that moment to moment to moment to moment, our experience of expressing ourselves is a different kind of experience than when we're not really recognizing moment to moment to moment that we have choice, that we have an experience of deciding what it is that we want to do next. And if we feel like we're on a train that can't stop, that we can't get off because it's just going too fast and it seems relentless and it seems inevitable, there are ways to unplug our conscious minds from the momentum of that. There are ways to just say, okay, I'm not going to contribute to that anymore. I'm not going to keep feeding that. The way it's expressed in some indigenous stories is like, the wolf inside that will win is the wolf that you feed. And so, if you decide that there's something that's happening in your life that you would like to unplug from, you'd not like to not be experiencing anymore, then one thing that you can begin to start doing now is to simply stop feeding it and not even worrying for a while about what else you might want to put your energy into. You can just stop putting your energy into that thing that's not working and allow that to just do its thing and without your assistance. And in that way, it loses some momentum just from that. And from your standpoint, you can just let it go because it's not yours to feed anymore. It's not yours to carry. So from your own experience, it will shift your experience a whole lot faster than it will shift that thing that's still out there going, because there are other reasons that it may be going. And so you don't have to worry about that anymore. So that's another huge way that you can serve yourself, is by simply honoring your own desires by not feeding the things that you don't desire. So that's one way, and you can practice that. That's one of the things that this piano improv thing can do, is that it can help to give you the experience of playing something that you're not liking, and if you're playing something that just feels unsatisfying to whatever degree, then the quickest thing to do is to simplify and bring yourself into the moment and just play in such a way that it starts to feel more interesting to you, more engaging to you. I'm actually playing fewer notes than I was before, but I'm playing them with more attention to what it sounds like. And when there's your attentiveness and your genuine curiosity, then the musicality starts to come through more easily. It's not something that you're doing necessarily is so much as it is that something that you're interested in and you're curious about, and you kind of bring your love and your appreciation for the sound and your joy of being able to hear sounds and your joy of being able to listen to beautiful things. And in that way, you get to have the experience of reprogramming how you respond to unpleasant circumstances, how you respond to boredom, how you respond to negative self-talk, things that you may say to yourself when you don't feel like you are living up to some standard that parts of you might hold for yourself. Ways to really notice those things and to go, what can I do next? It's like that's that in the present. Okay, I can accept that in the present. I can feel that's but that's how I feel when I see this and when I've experienced this. This is how I feel. Okay, that's now. What do I do next? What do I do next? And that's, bringing some consciousness to say, well, I'd really rather not be saying these things to myself. Okay, what would it be like to do that and not say that to yourself, or to say something else to yourself? And do that next. And what will happen is that you'll do that and you'll go, oh, that's cool. And then you'll come back tomorrow and you'll do something, and that old voice will come back in and you go, okay, what do I do next? And just continue to recognize that, yes, we are on trains. We are on some very heavy, old trains that we've been on for a very long time. We have no idea how long we've been on it. Maybe it's been years. Maybe it's been decades. Maybe it's been generations. Maybe it's been centuries. We don't know, really. We really don't. But we don't have to keep feeding that. We can start looking at a different way of proceeding. I can make a different decision this time. I can do something different this time. I can decide, okay, this time I'm going to say something that's a little bit more kind. Okay, this time I'm going to do something that's a little bit more musical. Okay, this time I'm going to do something that's a little bit more in alignment with who I perceive myself to be. This is going to be a way for me to move forward in a way that will bring more of what I want to see in the world, and I will do that. And I will do that tomorrow, and I will do that this afternoon. And as I start doing that on a more conscious and deliberate basis, and I'm listening to my feelings and I'm noticing what it is that I want to feel, and I'm doing that more and more, then that will be my contribution. And who knows what impact that might have. Who knows? We don't know. So we're coming up on 55 minutes, and there's a few things that I'd like to do. This is close to an hour, so I think I've fulfilled this commitment to do this live stream today. And I'm glad. Thank you for watching this. If you're there watching, I really appreciate it. I'm astonished, and I would love to hear your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. And there's a couple of links in the description below for how you can get more information about the Sound Yourself process, and how this piano improv can be a way to practice some of these things that I've been talking about in this video. And I would love to connect with you and answer any questions that I can, and see if there's any ways that I can support you on your own journey going forward. So thanks so much for watching, and blessings onward.